First of all, once again, welcome to Buffalo and welcome to the Performing Arts. So, just to get the ball rolling here, we know and we've been told that you are a man of change. And if so, we want to know what's going to be your first act. What will you change in Buffalo if you are hired? And I bring this up because, based on the talks with many people who work in the district, especially with teachers, morale is low and many are working without a contract. So what are you going to do to make a change?
Well, it's a great question, and it's absolutely the one that everyone wants to know, because there's a lot of change that appears to be needed. The first thing I will do, however, is nothing specific other than continue to talk to as many people of you as I can, as many of the community constituents that I've already begun to talk with, to see and hear what the common threads are of change. Folks have an idea. They already know what really needs to be changed in the Buffalo public schools. People have been very vocal about it, and they've been very clear about it. What I need to do is get on the ground and assess that situation from my own particular professional background and perspective, and then I will do first things first. What I can tell you, Claudine, is that everything that I do will be focused on children, focused on what is best for children. I have no other agendas. I have grandchildren now. I have loved ones and friends. I don't have any aspirations for political ambition. I come here in service, purely as a public servant. Been asked to help here. As you know, I have not applied for the Buffalo school position, so this is a little different. I want to be clear about that. And I'm here to vet and be vetted by the community, and hopefully with the board's decision imminent, I can join you in this great American city. But at the end of the day, it's up to the board to make that decision. They'll want to hear from you. I've begun to hear from you, but change is coming. If I'm hired, change is coming. It is a way of life. It is needed, but it will be the right change. I don't change for change's sake. I listen carefully to everyone, and then we go about doing things the right way. And we do it always with the interests of children in mind first, and their families and what they need to be successful young people, and then have an ambitious, aspiring career so they can contribute back to this community and to the world. That's how I go about the business of it.
Dr. Cash, thank you so much for this opportunity this evening. Since you left the Memphis School District in 2013, you've been a finalist for several other superintendent posts, yet you were not selected. So why should, if elected here or selected here for this district, why should we have faith that you can lead us what is going to be an unprecedented time for state receivership?
Well, because the issue of going into superintendent searches in this country at this time is a complex issue. I don't look at it as a negative not to be selected, because I'm making a choice too. It has to be a match. It has to be a good match. And these districts, large and small, have always been advertised as needing help from an individual and a professional like myself who can help them. So I often apply. Recruiters often ask me to apply. But when you go through the process and you ask your questions and you meet all of the people, there is a whole host of reasons, Eileen, that a candidate is selected or not selected. What I can tell you is that it is not always because you weren't the best qualified candidate. I probably was actually the best qualified candidate in all of these searches. But there are other things that come into play in the decision. And so you go through it, you learn through every experience, and I've gathered a lot of good learning through the last couple of months and years that I've been doing this, and I've enjoyed it, learning about new communities and what makes that community tick. So that should not be looked at as anything negative. That should be looked at as even more experience that I bring to the table. And so we're here now at this propitious moment in Buffalo history. It's an important one. And believe me, if you do choose me, you've chosen the right leader for Buffalo at this time. Another time, it might be someone else. But at this time, with the challenges that you have, and with the background and skills and knowledge that I have, I think that it's a great match. And I'm looking forward to being able to help you.
Moving on, you mentioned something how why you're here, and we all know that you were recommended by the new New York State Education Commissioner, Ilya. Are you a rubber stamp for her policies? Are you here as a favor?
Neither. A, I don't know what her policies are yet, and neither does she yet. She just got on board a couple of weeks ago, early July. I haven't been on the ground here. We come together because we respect each other in the work that we've done as superintendents. We were colleagues together in some of the very most difficult work that we have in this country, and that is to continue to lift our children to their full potential and make sure that every child has an excellent teacher every day, in every classroom, in every subject, every year of his school. That's what we were working on. And we pushed that work a good way down the road. And she saw how I had an aggressive approach about it in Memphis. She also had her approach in Hillsborough. And together we shared $200 million of the Gates Money Foundation. And the way I work with philanthropists is you send it. It's the same way I used to work with my mother-in-law. You send it and I spend it. And so that's how we go about trying to get the resources that our children need. And that's really the only thing we have in common. There's no rubber stamp. What I do know is that she has a laser-like attention here on Buffalo Public Schools. In New York State as a whole, Buffalo needs the greatest lift and has some of the most difficult challenges. So she wants to have someone that she knows will take care of the business at hand. And she has confidence, if I'm appointed, that that will happen. And she can get on with dealing with the challenges of the rest of the state, you see? And she'll say, what do you need? I will help you with all the resources and technical support that you need there to get the work done.
So she's made those assurances to you already?
Oh yeah, it's in the receivership laws, you know? So that is what is beneficial about it, is that you'll get help. You'll have an experienced and seasoned leader, and we can make more progress more quickly than we would otherwise.
We have 25 struggling city schools, 5 persistent struggling schools. How do you raise academic achievement? How have you in other struggling schools in your other work?
It's a good question, because if this work were easy, we wouldn't need to be here. We could have retired. I know I could have. It starts with a mindset, colleagues and community. It starts with what you believe about the children. I've always believed that every child is precious, every child is talented, every child has promises and is promising. I make no excuses about anything that has to do with something that we can't control. You can't control the community and the social economic background that children come from. That's happened. But what we can control is how we believe in those children, how we believe in those families and those communities. And so we have to change the mindset in these urban communities. I know in Memphis, everybody was welcome to Memphis. Good luck. And what was coming through in that tone was, you're not going to get anything done here. It's never happened. We don't think it can happen, so what makes you think you're going to do anything? And see, that's where the problem starts. You have to change your mind. Change your mind about children and about what can happen. So that's how we start. We start with the mindset. And believe me, when you hear me and you see me and you feel me and start to understand the kind of initiatives and the work that we're doing quickly here for these children and these communities, you'll see that yes, in fact, oh my, we are going to get something done. And that excites a lot of people, because we moved quickly in Memphis, got a lot done that no one thought we could get done. But it also threatens a lot of people, because a lot of folks benefit from the status quo and the way things are. And I'm not about that. I'm about children first. And if it needs to be changed for children, then that's what we're going to work to do. So understand what you're getting.
If you were hired, will you look to bring in out-of-towners, maybe individuals that you've worked with for your central office staff, or will you tap into some of the individuals who are here now, even some names that have been mentioned for this very position? We've heard the name, and this is no surprise to anybody in this audience. There's Kevin Everly, there's even the interim superintendent, Darren Brown. These are people who have worked with students in this district, who have worked with teachers in this district. They know the district. So what will you do? Will your central office staff be made up of individuals here, or will you bring in out-of-towners?
Well, it's a fair question. And again, I don't do a lot of either-ors. For me, you're going to hear both and. And what that means is my approach is to build first within. What is the talent that exists in the organization that we're leading? And so I'll be looking at that closely. I'll be interviewing all of the major physicians and folks into the principalships, talking to anyone that anybody recommends or suggests. I'll be giving them a thorough vetting from my particular professional experience and looking at the capacity of those individuals to do the work that we're about to do. See, not what we've done, what we're about to do. And if that person can keep pace with me, if that person can adjust and raise his or her level of performance on a daily basis to what my expectations are, then they're going to work with me. And they'll be fine. They have nothing to worry about. But if they can't hang, so to speak, and they can't roll with what we got to do and have the sense of urgency about it and the immediacy about it, and the fact that if you don't think there's challenges and work to get done here, then you got your head under a rock. There's a lot of good things that are here, and we're going to celebrate those things. We're going to raise them up and talk about it wide and long and all day. There's some tremendous good work going on in Buffalo Public Schools. So that's going to be a first thing. But then where there are challenges and where certain things just can't continue to stand for our children, then we're going to make aggressive changes in that direction. So it's not an either or. Start with the talent that's here, bring them, create a team, but if I see gaps in capacity for some of the roles that will be essential for this work, then I will look to go on a nationwide, international-wide search for the best talent that we can find. You have good talent here, and we're going to use that good talent, but we also are going to make sure that we have the best talent in every position that we can for these children. They deserve nothing less. Buffalo deserves nothing less than the best.
And along the lines of your management skills, for your personality, you've been described as headstrong. Some have been critical, saying you've had failure to create good working relationships, and others said that you did not communicate well with staffers. Is that an accurate picture of who you are?
No, not at all. Headstrong, yes, that's accurate. But if you talk to my staff, you talk to the people who work for me directly, you talk to the people who got to know me, and all across the board in every role that I've had over 30 years of experience with this. They will tell you that they love working with me, that they have a passion for coming to work because I teach. I'm a coach and a teacher first. But the ones who will be uncomfortable, there are those folks who hide and don't want to be held accountable, and they won't be comfortable with me. And so they're going to be the people critics. They're going to be people who love you. But my goal has never been to be well-liked. It's about being well-respected and get the work done for children, period. Whenever you're doing work in this messy thing called education, you are not going to win any personality contest. What you're going to win is the battle for children. And if I start seeing results, that's all I care about. And I'm about the whole child. Let me be clear. I'm about the whole child. It's not about test scores only. We become perverse in our obsession with test scores in this country. And it's a runaway thing. It's a runaway thing. But having said that, we cannot just not have good assessments about where we stand, because our children are competing with children all over the world now. It is no longer good enough to compete with your local middle school or the high school that was down the street, or Bennett versus South Park. It's about the whole world that will be competing for the spots in higher education when you graduate from high school, and for those entry spots in these new, emerging, demanding jobs that are coming along here in Buffalo. So it is important for us to understand that popularity is not that important for me. What is important is that we're all rowing in the same direction and getting our work done at high levels each and every day.
The other day I was out on a story and a recently retired teacher came to me because she knew that this forum was going to be happening tonight, and she told me that her biggest gripe with superintendents of the past in Buffalo is that they will talk to principals to find out what the teachers want. And she says that teachers want to say, they want to talk for themselves. Will you make it a priority to talk with the teachers in Buffalo, one-on-one?
Absolutely. It's been a part of my career ever since I started 32 years ago. There are 4 critical voices that I will have continual conversations with. First is the student voice. I believe very strongly in making sure that I hear from students on a regular basis. And I'm not just talking about the Student Government Association reps. I'm talking about students across the board who feel and have viewpoints and thoughts and feelings about their experiences in school. So I want a very varied perspective coming in from the student voice. And I'm surprised, frankly, that I hadn't met the student representative on the board. I was looking forward to that. But if it comes to there, then I'd love to meet her. But the other voice, right after student voice for me, is teacher voice. Teacher voice have always been important, and they've often been excluded. Everybody's doing work to the schools and to teachers, and not enough with teachers. So teacher voice, you look and talk to my previous union representatives and leaders, they'll tell you how we work and how often and how closely we work. We didn't always agree on everything, but we worked closely together. I would go to union meetings, and I'd go right in and listen to every issue and address whatever the issues the teachers wanted to talk about at that particular time. So I will stay open with what I call teacher summits or teacher meetings to continue to involve them in the work ahead. That's the second major voice. And so there are 2 others, the parent voice and the community voice. That's voice 3, and then strategic partners. And I call that's a big open sort of box there, but strategic partners from the business community, the philanthropic community, the faith-based community, the legislative community, on and on and on, whatever the partners out there that want to help and be part of the success of the Buffalo Public Schools, I will go and talk with and meet with and have conversation to engage them in the work. 4 main voices.
Dr. Cash, you mentioned the student voices, and in some of the reporting we've done, students have told us that it's a struggle just getting out of their home lives every day, and they don't have the parental support that they need. I did believe I read somewhere that you were in support of a residential school at one point. Are you in support of boarding schools to offer those support services that many of the students are lacking and that are searching for?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm in search of good schools, period. Period. I don't care if they're magnet schools, boarding schools, charter schools, public schools, academies, after schools, PM schools, Saturday schools, evening schools, good schools delivering top flight services for their clients. What I found is that we had a huge homelessness problem in Memphis, and it was growing. And so I was concerned that particularly our younger children weren't getting a good education because as soon as school was out, they were into a situation that many of us could hardly imagine. And I was talking to a lot of these families. And so that's when the idea came about that we had some empty buildings or some buildings that needed to be what we call reimagined. And I said, why not start a residential school for some of these children, homeless children, particularly grades 3 through 5, those critical development years where you're beginning to learn throughout the subjects. Literacy is key, but you're learning to use literacy as a tool for learning all of the subjects. But if you didn't have a light at home, you didn't have a space to study, you were going to get further and further and further behind, and that was what happened. So my idea was to convert one of the buildings into a residential school for the children so that they could have 24/7 the kind of nurturing, the attention, the focus on their critical development. So yes, I'm in favor of strategic initiatives that match the needs of the children. And that was one where I was. If it's true here as well, then we'll look into it as a potential strategy here.
We have a growing population of ESL students. Do you have any plans on how to address that need? Because as you probably heard just as we started here, the growing population of students who are speaking from Burma and those who speak Karen, how do you tackle that?
Again, I've had some experience with this. We had a burgeoning Haitian population, Somalian population coming into Memphis. And so one of the first things I did was call meetings like this in the communities. I would go out into the community, make alliances with the parent groups, with the leaders in those communities. There are always good, solid parenting and leaders in the communities, and maybe they just don't speak English, or maybe they do, and they have translators. But your point is you go out to and into rather than expect only a one-way conversation. It's a two-way conversation. We have to help families feel welcome and give them the supports that they need to be successful. I've rarely in my whole career met any parent that didn't want the best for their child. They didn't want the best for their child. So the issue is often, how can you help me make sure that I have the best for my child when I'm making a major transition? So that's one of the strategies. And another is we had to radically increase the number of ESL certified teachers. And what I liked about it is when I made the pitch and showed the data and had the community members come forth like this evening, the teacher stepped forward and said, I will get that additional certification and be helpful in that regard. So that's how we'll approach it, trying to be, ask for volunteers and ask for the need based on the data, what the data say. So it's no one way to address this issue because you have quite a few cultures, at least close to 70 as I understand. We had similar amount, about 53, 54 in Memphis, but the point is that you have to educate whoever comes to you. Whoever comes to you, you have to help and educate. And I find there are many people in the community that want to help out. They just have to be asked. So I look at that as a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Our schools thrive when we have rich diversity in the schools, and you can learn from different cultures and different people. I enjoy that. We all benefit from that.
You mentioned the Gates Foundation grant. You secured $92 million for Memphis. What would be realistic for Buffalo, given its market size, when it comes to securing more grant dollars for resources?
Excellent question. $1 billion. $1 billion.
How do you secure it? Where do you start? Who's got that much money?
You work with board members and you go over and you ask Mary Owen for some time to listen to my case. I've now done the research for the school district here in Buffalo. I want to present the case for the ask. And I'm going to ask for all of it. And then all you can do is say, well, I can't give all of that, Dr. Cash, but we can give you $300 million. See? Always go for the stars, and if you get the moon, you'll still be further than you were. When I say Mary Owen, I assume you understand what I'm talking about. The Ralph Wilson Fund, that's what I was talking about. That hasn't been, no one's asked. It's sitting right over there. So when you talk about what's the first thing I do, one of the first things that week I'm going to do is get a meeting with the individual who is in charge of that fund, and I'm going to work with my good colleagues on the board, if selected, to help set up that meeting.
But specifically, when you ask for a grant, you have to give certain aspects of what you would use it for.
Oh, absolutely.
What would you use it for?
You're going to find there's plenty to do here. There's plenty to do here. And the fault lines will tell you what needs to be done. So, for example, if you find that of the children coming into kindergarten, let's say here in Buffalo, there's 2,000 that come in every year. Well, only 300 or 500 of those 1,500 have had any enriched early childhood pre-K or 0 to 4 pre-K experience. So we're going to grow pre-K support services for our children who haven't had that enrichment. That's one use of the funds. I found that there were a lot of children that had health issues, and it wasn't looked at. You have children sitting in school that need eyeglasses, for example, and they've never been to a vision specialist. So we can use those resources to make sure that children get the eyeglasses that they need. And I could go on and on once I find the fault line. You see? Healthy food, nutritional services. I found that to be a big issue. Too many of our children are overweight, and they don't have good nutritional value in the food that they eat. It's not their fault, but there aren't avenues and places nearby where they can access this kind of food. So here in Buffalo, I might approach someone like, and I just was over there at the stocking store, I said, what is your best shopping store? Because I wanted to go see about the fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, and that kind of thing. And I was over at the Lexington, I think it's called the Lexington Co-op. I was washing my clothes right there on Auburn and Elmwood. I'm washing my clothes in there. And I didn't have to wash my clothes in there, but I did it because I wanted to feel the people. I wanted to see who comes in here. What do people like? They were very friendly, very nice. And so I would talk to, I think his name is Wegman, somebody Wegman, for example, okay? And find out if we can develop a partnership to make sure that we get better food, understand and learn the value of organic food, start gardens and vegetable gardens in every elementary school. There's so many things that we can do to help children learn about good nutrition, because the weight issue is less about exercise. Exercise is good, but if you continue to eat poorly, you're still not going to lose any weight. Ask any adult who's been trying to do it. Okay? So it's a multi-pronged approach is my point, and we do all of it to try to help children. So I will have plenty of asks, and I'll come to the board, make the presentation with staff and say, here are fault lines that I've run into since I've been on the ground here. Won't take me long. And we don't have it in the budget. You know, you got an $826 million budget. Good deal of that comes from the state, and you've got it locked up in those line items. So children need additional resources to thrive in this community. And you got to go after it. You got to be aggressive about it.
There are different opinions on the root cause of the underachieving schools, especially those in Buffalo. Some argue that it's because the staff is not adequately trained. Others argue that poverty on a wide scale is too difficult to overcome. So what are your thoughts?
Henry Ford, I believe it was. I kind of like quotes. I'm a quote guy. I'm not a quote all the time, but every now and then I'll pull one that fits a question. And I think what he said is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Wait a minute now. Did you all hear me? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So it starts with your mindset. With your mindset. And if you don't think these children can learn, irregardless of their background, irregardless of their poverty, poverty is not a chosen variable. It's something that they were born into. Child didn't choose that. And there are many of us that were born into poverty, and then we are proud to say when we go into adulthood, look at me now. And guess what? You only need one example like that. And then you have a track to run on. One of my best principals said it best. And I put her in a school that was the most difficult school in the whole city. And it was in a community like the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago. So whatever your analogy is here in Buffalo, it was the tough part of Memphis. And I put her in there because I knew what her mindset was. I knew what her heart was. She said, you have to love the children before you can teach the children. That's what I believe. That's what I know. You have to love the children before you can teach the children. And once you get that, you can learn all of the other stuff. You can learn anything you need to learn to help these children be successful. And I'm talking about all the children, because let me just say this to you. It's only 1 or 2 degrees of separation between your great school, your good schools here, and your struggling schools here. Any way you look at it, 13% not gonna cut it, 38% ain't gonna beat it. And you only have maybe 1 or 2 schools over 50% proficiency. So everything needs to be improved. We're in a culture of continuous improvement. That's what I believe in life. I'm always trying to improve. Be a better superintendent, be a better father, be a better husband when my wife was living, be a better grandfather now, be a better person. So there's work to do. And everybody can keep raising the bar. Don't get myopic about comparing yourself to those schools. If you think you're good already, compare yourself to the world, to the global time, to the global competition, and then stack up. The only way you get better as a professional is get among better people than you. That's the way I've always approached it. So I want to have those conversations with you. But we're not going to talk too long about those kids or what they can't do. Or poverty is unassailable. You can't really crack it. You can crack it, you can dent it, you can change it if you think you can. And if you think you can't, you won't. I'm just getting started.
We understand that.
Let's go to 10 o'clock.
I wish we could, but tonight we won't. Eileen?
The graduation rates dipped while you were in Memphis. Not sure what the factors were, but how do you go about tackling to raise the graduation rates? How would you do that for Buffalo?
It's a great question. The data that was presented in there was actually not correct. It went back because we were in that merger and that transition, and frankly, we took our eye off the ball because we got consumed in that merger thing. When you're driving this work, you have to stay full-time on the ball. And so at the time that we were all in it together and driving that reform, that graduation rate was going boom, boom, and boom. You take your eye off the ball 1 minute and, you know, that happens in any district. So I regret that. And I'll take responsibility for it even though I was actually gone when that happened. But the point is this, when you stay focused on the early childhood, we call it prenatal to career. And every step along that way, that's how you improve the graduation rate. You don't improve it by starting at 12th grade. You started in early literacy, singing to, talking to, humming to, touching your belly, all of those things while the baby is in the womb. And when the baby comes, you continue the talking to in regular words, regular language, sharing and building that vocabulary to 4,000 to 5,000 words by the time that child gets into kindergarten. But 200 and 300 words won't work. So we have to continue to educate and teach and help our people, and we have many initiatives that we use to do that so that they can help these young children develop their vocabulary. Literacy is the single most important thing in our whole business. Once our children are literate, once our children are skillful with literacy, they can conquer all of the other subjects. And so we go full throttle to help improve even teen mothers who are pregnant. We had an adolescent development program for teens who were pregnant. I brought the males in too. Males weren't going to get away with this. They come into the program too, who were the fathers. Sometimes they were teen fathers. Sometimes they were baby daddies who were 34 and 36 years old. See? And I went after them to get them involved in children's development, even though it was pathetic, the condition and the situation that was happening so often in that locale. But this is happening. My point is, there isn't anything that I'm not aware of that we won't try to address as a challenge and turn it into a success for our children. Because if you ignore it now, or you ignore it today, or you don't want to address it today, let me say it that way, it will make you pay attention to it. It will make you pay attention to it as they come up through and get older. So my point and simple answer to you, or straight answer to you, Eileen, is that there are proven approaches and strategies, and there are untested ones that I don't even know the answer to, that I'll ask you about and get involved with what you find to be successful. And we'll build on the successes that are already happening here in Buffalo. A lot of good work, as I said, that I'm coming into already here on the ground in Buffalo. Some tremendous strategic partners. Tremendous strategic partners in the early childhood space, in the Say Yes to Education space, in the after-school space, and supporting our youth. So we'll do all of that and much more to make sure they have a successful pipeline from pre-K to 3, 4, 5, middle school. 9th grade is an important transition year. Gender academies, freshman-based gender academies have success, but we're not bringing anything just to bring it. We're going to see what fits and can be most helpful here in Buffalo. Building on your good ideas, building on my experience, a winning team.
We want to tap into some of the questions from the audience. This one comes from Ellen Kennedy. What specific actions would you take that have been already proven to turn around failing schools?
Well, again, you know, what's called the receivership schools here are what we call the I-zone schools. I put together with my staff I-zone schools, and you have to inject them with heavy doses of support. You have to make sure that they get first-rate principals. Leadership matters at the school level. You have to have the best principals you can put in these schools. You have to have great teachers, and there are already great teachers in those schools, but many need support and need help. And when I looked at your professional development, I don't know, I want to be kind here. When I looked at what the professional development offerings and the targeted nature of them and how and who got it to be helpful to their pedagogy and their content level and when they could do this and when, it's a big gap. It's a big gap. And we got to close that gap for teachers. You cannot expect teachers to turn around these struggling schools with the present level of support and help and assistance, technical assistance, and all of that they need, that they want, and that is specific to their needs. So we got to take a good look at that. I'm going to look at capacity on the ground for that right now, and then again, that might be something that we have to bring in and what have you. But all of those things, community engagement. We talk about Common Core. Yes, the teachers need to be trained in Common Core. Principals absolutely have to be trained in Common Core. And principals should be good instructional leaders with Common Core. They should be able to go in and teach the lesson and really demonstrate what we're after in those assessments, in those shifts in mathematics and language arts. But then the parents also have to be trained. And I see that lacking often when you try to turn around. So parents have to be worked with and trained in these new expectations, and then the student has to give and put in time. And you'll hear me talk about 10,000 hours, and you'll hear me parents really pressing you with between the ages of 7 and 17, between the ages of 8 and 18, you got to put in 10,000 hours, young man, young lady, of study. And people look at me and aghast. They say, what are you talking about? My kid's not going to do that 3 hours a day, what you're talking about. Nobody's going to do that. Well, you're on the phone for 13 hours a day. You're watching some kind of multimedia for 14 out of the 24 hours. And you're sleeping maybe 4 or 5. You put your kid to bed, but they don't go to sleep. Go look and see what they're doing out there. And when you see a really good violinist or a musician, a singer, and you ask the parent how much time does that child study to become that good in the violin when they perform in front of the board, father will tell you 5 hours. 5 hours a day. So if he practiced 5 hours a day on average to become that good, that's what it's going to take for our students to be competitive in this rapidly changing global society. Point is, you're going to have to put the time in. It can't all fall on teachers. It cannot fall on principals. The student has to do it first. People say, Dr. Cash, you didn't do, I don't teach the student. I don't even raise the student. But I expect. See? So we're all going to have to do more. We're going to have to expect more. And we're going to have to be better at what we're trying to do with our young people. Now, if you're already doing that, then just keep doing that. But you're not going to get there without everybody doing their part in this lift. And I'm a major leader and cheerleader for that work. And you do need that at this time.
This is another question from the audience, and it goes to your professional development. How have you implemented professional development that is visible in the classroom, but also effective in improving student learning?
Well, that's the Gates work. That's the Gates work. This is an extraordinary piece of work, and it's been well documented. And so, if I could give the 30-foot speech or the elevator speech about it, there were 4 main strategies. You know, we first had to define what effective teaching looks like and what it means, and then develop a measure to measure that. And that had never been done before. And then we had to have a new way of recruiting high potential new teachers at the same time, and this is where I pushed back with Gates and I was successful, at the same time honoring, respecting, and trying to keep our good veteran teachers in the classroom. There was this whole conversation going on about old versus new. See? And then that suddenly translated into the best versus the not so good. So if you were a new teacher, you were good. If you were already, you were part of a broken system and so forth. So I said, no. Our best teachers are our veteran teachers who care, who stay in the game, who stay on point. They don't do it for anything because of the passion. They wouldn't be doing it for so long if they didn't care and they didn't love and didn't want to see their students do well. And the irreplaceables among those teachers are the ones you absolutely have to keep. And we haven't figured out good strategy to your question on how to keep our irreplaceables. And hence they leave, they retire. And they often disappear into retirement and never were fully appreciated in just a few things. And there's 6 things, I don't want to go deep here, but a few things could have helped them to stay. See? Rewarding them, complimenting them, encouraging them, having sabbaticals, lattices where they can maybe grow in their profession and become a teacher leader, take time off to publish and help and consult and work with other districts or other schools within the district to share their knowledge and their best practices. Lots of things you can do that stimulate and encourage reflective teaching and the best practices of professional development. So many good practices. And we were having strategic partners to help us with those ideas from across the country, has some great national strategic partners. We'll recruit some of those here to help. But also the best in-house thinking we also used and let them spread that knowledge within. So good teachers within the Buffalo Public Schools help other teachers horizontally and vertically, and content to content. So those strategies help with professional development. There are multiple ones, and the best one of all is to recognize your teachers. We had a program called I Teach, I Am. I'd love to see it brought to Buffalo where, and some of that Ralph Wilson money you talked about how to spend, we will use that. Where you put up on buses as they go by, and trolleys, you put the teachers, pictures of teachers, their picture, their photograph, and you catch them in a good moment. They need to be smiling. Yeah. You got their name up, you've got the content they teach, and where they teach. I am. And I'm proud to teach at such and such. And you got them everywhere. On billboards, you got them at the movie theater before the movie starts, they come on. And these are our irreplaceables and our best teachers. And teachers say, I never get rewarded. No one ever, thought that everybody's sort of treated the same. So these are ideas that once you light that candle, once you stroke that energy and that catalyst, it becomes contagious, and schools will lift. Schools will lift. I'm not concerned about it, but I agree wholeheartedly with teachers that if we only focus on tests, if we only focus on that, you sap the excitement out of teaching. You sap the energy out of it. And that's not why we went into teaching, to be overly consumed with the test. Test is important. But if we develop all of those other aspects of children, get them excited again, like you have here at the performing arts, that's because children are talented in the arts. We need more sort of what we used to call optional schools, or you call them magnet schools, where there's a focus in the school. And where that thing is theme-based. I like career-themed high schools, for example. You have these new emerging economies here. Let's theme some of those high schools and the curriculum in those high schools. Yes, you're hitting all the English and the math and the pre-algebra and the calculus. You're still doing all of the good subjects, core subjects, but you're doing it in relationship to a career and an emerging industry that's exciting. And then the kids come to school, they're energized, they love what they're doing, they're working on projects, and graduation becomes second. Of course they're going to graduate. The test, okay, no problem. Because they're learning it in an interdisciplinary fashion. It's very exciting. And you already have some folk here that are doing some work like that. And let's spread good practice and that kind of thing. So I'm simply saying to you, Eileen, that there is no stone that we won't turn over, and there's nothing that we won't try. We're going after best practice and bring it to Buffalo. And where it already exists, we're going to scale it. We're going to expand it. You see?
We have another question from the audience. It has to do with your relationship with the Buffalo School Board. How would you work with a school board that is considered to be dysfunctional?
Who said that? I've never heard such a thing. What I do, everybody is good. Everybody is a intelligent, fully developed person when they become an adult. I make that assumption. And I make the assumption that I was raised on. Treat each other like you want to be treated. And if you act in a civil way, in a respectful way, inject wit and humor when it's necessary just because it's a difficult job, listen to everybody because everybody has an interest. And if you can find common ground on that interest and it's about children, but you just may have a different way of going about it, then there's the leadership opportunity. there's the leadership opportunity. Board members in a democratic society is one of the most important elected democratic kind of processes that you can have. And so everybody represents a constituent. You have to hear that. And as long as board members are representing their constituents and not their individual goals or aspirations, they're going to be great board members. And we're going to work together. We're going to be a great team for children. And that's ultimately what it is. So I don't know about dysfunction or anything like that. That's a strong word. It's kind of like racist and that kind of thing, and you hear that. Those are strong words. What I like to say is, you know, all people have good, they're good. There's a good piece in them and good intention. And you have to find what that is and build on that. And then you just tap people when behavior, just like you do with everybody. You know, no, we don't do that. We do this. You redirect. So no, I haven't heard that, and we'll get along famously.
Remember that.
Another audience question: what concept or program would you implement here in Buffalo that was successful for you in Memphis?
Wow, these are a lot of. See, I don't have any suitcase over here that I'm gonna come and open up and put in here. It can be. This is a toolbox, and it's helpful because much of it worked and some of it didn't work. What you come to Buffalo to do is first assess the condition of the patient. See? You have to give it a physical. And depending on what's wrong or what it needs, you say, hey, that's good, keep doing that. You're in good shape. Your blood pressure is good. Your heart rate is good. Those other things that we get tests on, that all is fine. But you're in this index for BMI. See? And you gotta get that down. So then you develop strategy to help get that down. But if it's not a heart disease problem, then you don't go and automatically apply your heart disease solution. See? But it's good to have as broad a toolbox as you can possibly have. And that's what we do. We build the toolbox. Now, one thing that I love, it's just a favorite thing. It doesn't mean I'll do it here, but I love and I get support for it, is that our children, so many, not all, but many literally did not eat when they went home until they came to school the next day. And if they went home on a Friday, they did not get to eat until Monday. They had to scrimp and scrap and fight to get something to eat. And I didn't realize how deep that issue was. And literally, there'd be locks on the refrigerator. And I guess there was some reason for it, but you know, kids were not eating well. So we started a 3-pronged program and grew it fast. Breakfast in the classroom, and you heard about that. But we grew it fast. It was in every elementary school. Kids got off to a good start, and you could even see the energy pick up, the eyes and the brightness and alertness pick up. Lunch, well, because you have 93% free and reduced, lunch is there. But then we did supper. And we took a lot of flack for it. Because what? Why are you doing supper? That's not your core business. Well, because children weren't eating. And you can't turn to page 57 in the textbook in geometry and start dealing with quadratic equations and all of that stuff if you can't see, you're hungry, you didn't get any sleep. So dealing with the whole child and all of the issues affecting our young people becomes a simultaneous goal while we're also working to improve achievement. And I think they're correlated, is my point. I just think they're correlated. And you have to help fill some of these gaps where they don't have it. Otherwise, you're just spinning if you think you're just going to keep putting the same. We had 114 5-year-olds, kindergartners, fail 3 times. See? And it was because we misdiagnosed root cause. We talked louder the next year. But hearing wasn't the problem. See? These other issues, these other health issues were interfering with that kindergartner being able to succeed with the curriculum.
Dr. Cash, we have just a couple of more questions we want to ask, because our time
So that would be one of my favorite things that I want to make sure the kids are fed. That's why I said Wegman. That's why I said the Lexington Co-op, because I believe fresh vegetables, fresh fruit should be in every sector of town. I found that where I had to go to get my own fresh vegetables more expensive than anything else. Why is good stuff for you more expensive than the crap? Okay, and I want to make sure that we get, and you have a food something here. I think it's called a food something bank. That's it. It's a great program, and we'll build on that. And I'm glad it's here. We'll start the vegetable gardens in every elementary school if we can, and we'll do good things like that. That I think the community and the children will enjoy.
This question from the audience again, in your opinion, which would produce the best result? Reduce the class size for primary grades, currently 30 to 31, or lengthen the school day and school year?
How many in the primary?
According to this, 30 to 31.
That's too much. That's too many. That's twice as many as it should be. Now it's expensive because you see, now you've got that many more assistants or teachers or whatever. But if that's actual, I thought we were at I'm 18 to 19 to 20. Thought I saw that data somewhere. No? You got too many kids in the early grades. The early grades is where it's most important to have small class size. Most. Children need the individual attention. So that would be my answer over, what was the other thing? Over more
improving the lengthening the school day.
Lengthening the school day
and school year.
Yeah, I mean those are strategies. Sometimes again, both and. But first you've got to get that class size. Because if you lengthen the school day and you still got lots of kids in the extended school day, it defeats the purpose. So class size first in the early grades especially.
Dr. Cash, this is our last question because we are running out of time this evening.
No. I'm having a good time here.
We'll be around to talk to you.
Oh, okay.
And this is something the school district has been working on, is attendance. But what would your approach be to improving attendance? I'm always amazed at the beginning of the school year where they hold phone banks before the school days, the actual week starts, and they're calling on kindergarten families to have their child make sure that they're in school to start kindergarten.
It's a good question, and attendance is a tough one, especially if kids feel what? If they feel disengaged, if they don't feel like the school has anything for them, or that they're not interested in what's being taught or how it's being taught and that kind of thing. The best way to increase attention is to increase the motivation and interest of the children. And you can do, the best teachers and the creative teachers know how to do that. They really do. But we got to get the parents engaged too. And we got to change some of the houses that we're in. If you keep doing what you do. I changed the nature of the environment. Like I said, one of our, I call it dropout factories, 2,300, 2,400 kids, low graduation rates, poor attendance, so forth, lots of gangs. We changed it to career-themed academies. And we started getting the kids into Dress for Success. We talked about it, Dress for Success. We did a little rap video with the mayor, with myself, with some other community leaders. I donated 180 ties. You don't know me, but I like ties. See? I remember my wife and my sister would get an accessory. And then they said, oh, now Kriner, I got to get an outfit to go with that accessory. See? Ties are similar. I just think they make the outfit, and you could have 2 suits, but if you got 20 ties, it looks like you got 20 suits. See? 20 outfits. My point is, the kids were thrilled when we said we're going to do a Dress for Success thing, and my whole real goal was to get those pants up. You follow? I said, I'm not having anyone behind And it had been the accepted forever. But guess what? When you change the thinking, change the box, kids will come along if it's something to do. I go down to the prison and I met with the juveniles and they said, Dr. Karen, we don't like the dress code up at the school. And these kids are all in. I said, I understand, son. I hear what you're saying. It is a bit rigid and so forth. But let me ask you this. I said, you got on a uniform now. It's orange. No, this is how I talk to the kids. I said, so uniforms are relative. And then I got into a conversation with them and they started to cry because I knew what the real issue was. They had never learned to read. And they just said, Dr. Cash, can you please help us to read? And they said, don't leave us. Don't forget about us. That's what they said, not don't leave. Don't forget about us. And so the next initiative I did based on that data, because we were arresting our kids hand over foot, 100 of them going downtown, arrested, fingerprinted, handcuffed, fingerprinted, put into the system. We broke that. But I put a school in, I put a classroom into the juvenile court. So that while these kids who are often arrested and detained for a short period of time, but so they wouldn't miss school, I put a classroom with technology and computers in there so that they could continue. And I put 2 teachers in there. And more than that, I put it in so that they could do credit recovery and go on a pace that wherever they put the time in, they could. And many of them graduated and went on, and just to see those faces and change that trajectory. But I told them, you got to put the time in. And they were putting 11 and 12-hour days into trying to catch up and go because it was a different environment. They weren't successful in the traditional environment. And we go on and on with the strategies that you do use once you find a fault line. You see? So this is exciting work. This is the work. That's why I came to Buffalo. I don't want to go to Tonawanda or some of these other places. You don't need me up there. But I want to come here because this is the work. And I am passionate about it and uniquely qualified for it. If you don't want me, that's fine too. I'll go back with my grandbabies and got a nice place that we'll go and have fun. But right now, for 4 or 5 hard years, let's run hard, change it, get out of it, stop making excuses, and get Buffalo into world class in everything it does.
Dr. Cash, thank you for